new push on immigration. President Trump is reaching across the aisle to strike a deal with Democrats on so-called dreamers. In return, the president wants funding to pay for the border wall. Some top priorities in his 70-point plan include building the wall, hiring 10,000 additional ICE agents and 600 prosecutors, mandatory E-Verify system which confirms an immigrant's work eligibility, and a new points-based system for green cards. But don't expect a deal from the Democrats. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi are already saying, no thanks. Quote, we told the president at our meeting that we were open to reasonable border security measures alongside the DREAM Act. But this list goes so far beyond what is reasonable. This proposal fails to represent any attempt at compromise. Meanwhile, the president's counselor has this message for critics on the left.
They should actually be calling their friends Chuck and Nancy to say, you know, are you going to give up this deal because you don't want to, why don't you want a border wall constructed? Why don't you want more immigration judges and agents? And why isn't a reasonable policy to limit chain migration? And also to stop these visa overstays and to make sure people that are flouting the law once they're here, breaking the law once they're here, go back.
Okay, so Jesse, what do you make of this plan? The Democrats obviously pushing back, but Trump, a.k.a. the wall, pushing forward.
That's right. Well, Crying Chuck needs to put down the New York Times and start reading The Art of the Deal, because this is classic Trump. You start with a big ask, and then you dial it back and end up getting 75% of what you want. Right. I'm sick of hearing this is a non-starter. Can we ban that phrase?
Yes.
According to Democrats, anything the Republicans propose is a non-starter. The Democrats' idea of compromise is 100% of what they want. I understand why, though, because the Republicans in Congress have caved and buckled for the last 8 years. So it's two-pronged strategy here. One, you insert the wall, and at the last minute, you dial it back, and then you look like you're flexible and a big leader. Or you take the wall to the limit and make the Democrats look like rigid radicals. But here, he still has a trump card. He can extend DACA if he doesn't like the terms for an extra 6 months, so he controls the whole debate. The issue, though, is the wall isn't as popular as protecting dreamers. But I don't think Trump cares about polling, and I think his base is going to stay with him no matter what.
Well, he cares about that base.
Exactly.
He does care about dreamers.
Yes, he does care, but he also cares about the big, beautiful wall.
Big and beautiful. Great.
I'm a dreamer. I dream about the wall. But, you know, they're green cards. They're not gift cards. I think somewhere along the line, we lost our way. What's wrong with a little bit of processing, a little bit of rules? I don't think it's that big of a deal. But 70 points, that's a lot of points.
It's a lot.
Could you imagine being in that?
It's not 1,000 points a lot.
You imagine being in that meeting, you know, point 22. Yeah. And then it's like, you just go like, geez, there's 47 more points.
It's refreshing to hear you talk about rules and process in such a respectful way.
This is an interesting point. No, this is an interesting point, because the argument that the Democrats have about immigration is exactly the opposite of their argument for gun control. They don't want laws. They go with immigration. They go, why do we need more laws? Why do we need more laws? We need sanctuary because, you know what, they're going to... But that's exactly opposite the gun control law argument, which is we need more laws. We need more friction. We need to slow things down. But they can't do it with immigration. I find that very interesting. By the way, that can work both ways. You can say that somebody that argues against gun control laws, why do they want laws for immigration?
I like the first way better.
Thank you.
So true, and you see with Governor Jerry Brown doing that with California and essentially making it a sanctuary state. They want to put, you know, and make their own laws and play by their own rules, but yet they don't like these over here. Hello, Juan.
How are you? Welcome back, Juan.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
How do you feel about this?
Well, I mean, I see it so differently because I realized that there was a deal in place, a deal between the president and Chuck and Nancy, right? And then the president has in a group of Republican senators who say, hey, we think you are pushing us out, Mr. President. We don't like this. Why don't we look at some principles that we can employ with regard to immigration? And so then, having struck a deal with Chuck and Nancy, guess what? Huh?
Call him Chancey.
Chancey, all right.
Oh
having struck a deal, hashtag Chancey, he then goes back to them and says, here's my principles. Well, wait a second. And nobody does business this way. Nobody does a deal where you say, it's all on my terms or no terms or the highway. And that's what he did. So then when the Democrats say, excuse us, that's not the deal we discussed, because they had agreed, by the way, Jesse, to added security on the border as part of their deal. And they had agreed that they want e-verify. They want so many of these things.
So what was
but
the
then
deal breaker?
Because Trump has just gone back and undone the deal. And I agree with what Jillian said. I've read Trump saying he cares about the dreamers. He would not want to do anything to hurt the dreamers.
But we don't want more dreamers, and that's the point, and that's what the wall accomplishes.
Dreams
But
have to
there's-
end,
but
according
the
to Waters
dreamers-
Someone's
World.
got to wake up eventually.
But Jesse, the dreamers are a circumscribed group. They are not. You can't add more.
Sure you can, when you have more coming over
No,
and
there's
bringing their
nobody
children,
coming. You can't.
hence more dreamers.
That almost got weird for a second there. So hashtag, yeah. I saw the
What
look
does
on
their
Greg's
religious
face.
practices have to do with anything?
Leave it out of it, okay? So hashtag Chansey, whose theme song I guess is going to be ABBA. Take a Chansey on me.
What about nut? I like nut.
I like that a lot. So Jillian, I like what you're saying here. You're saying, you know what, the president isn't trying to be mean-spirited or not honor those like hardworking Americans who came here, perhaps through no, fault directly, of their own. So is there a way to kind of make both sides happy a little bit, or will the Democrats just be obstructionists? Because now you see Chansey saying, no, we have no bid for this.
Well, I was surprised to see what worries me in this proposal is there is an element of using the Dreamers as a negotiating chip. And President Trump has taken great care in many speeches, many public remarks to talk about the fact that emotionally and psychologically he connects with the idea that America should be a place to welcome these people.
Sure.
So I was disappointed by that. But my own political stuff aside for a second, I think the proposal that was submitted yesterday is really the administration's answer to the criticism that President Trump received in the wake of the failed health care repeal, which is that he was not invested personally. He was not involved in the process. He was not down in the nitty-gritty, figuring this stuff out, trying to help Congress come up with the specifics to populate this bill. This is something that's chock-a-block full of specifics. No one can levy that criticism again, against him in this instance. I think that was really the priority here, was cobbling together a complete plan.
So, Jillian, the thing here is, though, that when I just want to put the point out there, the president has been willing to reach across to the Democrats to try to find some common ground. He's doing that even right now with Chuck Schumer as it relates to health care and saying, hey, look, I'm willing to do a deal. Like, can you guys come and sit at the table? No, but he is. You can't say that he's not. He's reached out in that regard.
Isn't he trying to undercut the health care deal?
Well, this comes to
He's trying to make it better. And when are the Democrats going to reach across and say, okay, yeah, we're actually going to try and do something that's in the best interest of the country?
And you don't sit down to a negotiation and put out your lowest number. You sit down and put out your highest number and then negotiate
Art of the deal.
down. Art of the deal.
It's what Jesse said. A 70-point plan isn't what he's expecting to get.
Right.
If he gets 30 points out of that, that's a win.
Yeah.
And it also exposes the fact that Chansey did not read this because they didn't give specifics. He should have said, well, what do you don't like? Tell me what you don't like.
They tend to do that.
And they
don't do their
shove
reading.
it through. But you brought up the point about how he's using DACA as a chip. That was brilliant on his part because it wasn't a chip. He'd already given into that, but he's still using it now. He says, you know what, you can have that. But you knew he was never going to send those kids back or the families back. So he fabricated a chip out of something that wasn't a chip. Also, within
do you think he would go, if Congress
No.
doesn't get this done, do you think that he'll go back with an executive fix to the problem? Do you think he'd go that far?
No, I don't think so.
No, the base would freak out after that. And the politicians use chips all the time. They use the military as a bargaining chip during the debt ceiling.
Right.
Let's be honest. The Democrats don't want to secure the border. They like illegal immigration. They want to keep criminal illegal aliens here in this country. They don't want them deported. They're all for infrastructure, except the wall.
Oh, gee.
Except the wall.
Wait
They
a
want to build
second.
everything in America. The wall's going to be made in America, too, Juan. Don't you like that?
Is that right? I hope so, because it was going to be paid for by the Mexicans.
And
a
it
minute
will
ago.
be.
Oh, I see. But let me just say.
It will be. He
Wait
hasn't
a
given
minute.
up on that.
He hasn't.
Jesse hasn't given up. In
up.
Waters World, Mexico pays for it.
And what? Oh, I didn't know we were on Fantasy Island. Okay, but here's the thing.
Surrounded by water, yes.
You know, one of the arguments that came from the Dreamers, remember when they went and they got in Nancy Pelosi's face out in San Francisco, pushed her off? Remember that?
Yes.
What were they saying, Jesse? They were saying, don't use us as a football in your negotiations with Donald Trump. Don't give in to added security for this and added funding for that. We believe we have a case to make. The American people want us to stay. Why are you guys making us a political football? And Nancy Pelosi, remember, she ran off the stage. You humiliated her. You enjoyed that moment.
I very much did, Juan.
Okay,
Let's
so
play it.
now-
Do we have the tape?
So now, guess
tape.
what? Here comes Donald Trump, and he's in trouble with the Republicans. So he says, oh, wait a second, I got some principles here. And he's changing the deal, Jesse.
Well,
That's not the
he's
art of the deal.
changing the deal
That's the
because
art
he
of
has
the
principles.
reneging on a deal.
Sounds like a good deal to me.
Oh,
You know what-
principle, yeah.
what I-
Reneging on a deal, that's not you.
No, listen, he always said he wanted massive border funding
They
as part
they
of this
made
deal.
a deal to
This
give him
was
some border funding.
It was a handshake deal, Juan. There was nothing in
I
writing.
see. If a Democrat did this
Yeah,
to you,
Greg.
you would be through the roof, Jesse Waters.
Wouldn't, because it wouldn't happen to me. Juan.
Oh, I see.
All right, Greg.
When you
Seize the
compare,
moment.
When you compare exit question, okay? McLaughlin Group. Call back. If you compare illegal immigration to the Russian meddling, why is one foreign influence okay and the other one not?
I don't
I
think
wasn't
that's a
paying
fair.
attention.
That is
It's not
not
supposed to be
a fair.
fair. It's not supposed to be fair, but it's a great question.
It is a non-starter.
You know why? You know why?
It is a non-starter.
You know why it's not fair? Because it's a great question. Why is it illegal immigration can have an impact on your elections and on what you do, but Russian meddling can't?
Great point.
What are you talking
Great
about?
point.
One is a domestic issue for us as Americans.
Illegal immigrants are not domestic. They're coming
Are
from
you
other
ki-
countries.
oh, that they're in
Central
our
America.
country,
But
Greg?
So
They're here.
There were Russians in here too.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
But okay, also,
I can tell you.
the idea of foreigners register or not registering, voting without registering, so voting illegally in this country. That myth was
Picketing.
largely
No, I'm
dispelled
talking about
after the
picketing.
2016
I'm talking about demonstrations,
Like
political
protesting.
demonstrations. Keep up.
Oh,
Whoa.
All right, Gutfeld, you're on a timeout. Not a
She
word
knows I'm
from you
kidding.
during
This is
the
'cause she's in the
entire
dynasty.
You know what, Jillian?
commercial break.
Jillian, he's a Russian. I think he's a
Yeah,
Russian.
I am a spy.
Well, no,
I wouldn't put it past you.
because associations. Okay, coming up, more national anthem protests this weekend for the NFL, and the vice president takes a stand. That's next. Stay with us.
Works here every day. Learn to live like an animal. The jungle where we play. You gotta look up for what you see. You'll take it eventually. You can have it. Space. Another one in the basket.
just when you thought we were out, the NFL players pull us right back in.
Oh, man.
Vice President Mike Pence and his wife attended the Colts 49ers game Sunday, only to witness the 49er players kneeling for the national anthem once again. So the vice president left the game, tweeting, "I left today's Colts game because POTUS and I will not dignify any event that disrespects our soldiers, our flag, and our national anthem." The president jumped in, supporting the vice president. "I asked VP Pence to leave stadium if any players kneeled, disrespecting our country. I am proud of him," and Second Lady Karen. But now critics are suggesting it was a stunt. Here's Eric Reed of the 49ers.
So this is
The last time he's been to a Colts game was 3 years ago. So this looks like a PR stunt to me. He knew our team has had the most players protests. He knew that we were probably going to do it again.
so ridiculous.
By the way, it should be noted that the vice president was scheduled to be at that game for the statue unveiling of Peyton Manning.
Take the statue down.
I know. What are we going to do?
Crazy.
I think that statue's got to come down there, Gutfeld.
Yeah, look,
What do you think?
okay. The idea that you're concluding that it's a stunt does not make you intelligent. He could have been good, but he knew this was going to happen. It's a stunt, so what? The media uses every crisis as a stunt. If one side can pull stunts, if the NFL can pull publicity or political stunts, why can't the vice president do the same thing? I think that they basically just spiked the football on the NFL. And I think it's hilarious. You responded with a political stunt and a publicity stunt against one that had caused so much divisiveness. I think it's great, but just admit it. It was a stunt. And so what? I love stunts.
Why are you doing this? Why are you undercutting me before I can argue with you? What is wrong?
Dawn hates it when that
Something is wrong with him today. I think it's that Russian guy he's in here.
But I mean, Juan, was it a stunt? I mean, he has a son who's active duty in the Marine Corps. Maybe he was very upset about the kneeling.
Well, from all that we hear, he spoke to Trump right before. He tells the people in the press pool, "Don't get out of your cars because I'm going to leave soon." And then, I mean, it looks like every indication is it was a stunt.
And it was an effective stunt because everybody's talking
I don't
about
think it was a stunt. Pushing back pushing back, pushing back.
Kimberly, go ahead.
Just because it was planned.
He's a
doesn't mean
huge fan of the Colts. So why wouldn't he be there? You know, wearing the jersey, the whole thing. This was planned ahead of time. And by the way, he should support the president.
Wait a
and
second.
say
You said it was planned ahead of time.
meaning the event for him to attend the game. And he was already going to be there for a discussion tax cut. So he went. And okay, so the 49ers know what's wrong with the team. But by the way, Colin, who started all this, like, hey, I'll play for any team. I'm going to stand now. It's no problem. No kneeling. That's the other latest thing from him.
I think he's pushing back on that, or his girlfriend is.
Yeah, that was.
Let's see.
Yeah, someone said that was fake news, and I'd like to hear from Colin. Can he do an interview one of these days? It would clear a lot of things up.
I'd like to go sock shopping with him.
Yeah, he needs to upgrade the wardrobe. Now, Jerry Jones, the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, said that all the players are going to stand. And if you don't stand, you're going to get into some trouble. What do you think about that?
I think that it's fair because the NFL, as we've discussed before, has very clear guidelines that are distributed to all the players about what conduct on the field during, before, and after the game is supposed to look like.
Right.
That said, there's some distance between you and I on this. I think that nobody's really pulling a stunt here in the sense that everybody's is exercising grievances in a legitimate way. They're exercising their constitutional rights. The players who are kneeling, the players who are standing, the American people who are boycotting games, the vice president, everyone has legitimate grievances here. And I think that's okay, right, for all of this to be going on. The people I think that I put in the center of this, and I put a lot of the blame on, is the NFL.
Right.
They have very clearly issued guidelines, and they're reneging on them for they've not put forward
Because they're scared of their players, and I know that from a very well-placed source. Who
Scared
said that.
of their players?
Yes, he said that there are a lot of owners who are afraid that the players are going to do this, and they don't want to come down too hard on them. But let me ask you this.
Do what?
They're going to kneel, and it's going to be bad for business and terrible PR.
Well, guess what? Remember the baseball strike? That didn't work out so well for baseball if they're going to get too cute with this.
But I
Well,
think
let me
so far
just
this
ask
has
Juan.
been in their financial interest. All the national and international attention on this on the NFL.
The ratings don't really prove that. Juan, let me ask you, Jamil Hill, our friend over at ESPN, who got into trouble for saying that Trump was a white supremacist, weighed in again and wants to boycott Jerry Jones's advertising from the Cowboys, was just suspended.
Right. And
Fair,
in fact,
unfair?
Well, I think that when she starts to do things repeatedly, and according to ESPN, they had spoken with her and not suspended her after the first comment, but made it clear that she represents the company. So, you know, by the standard I would apply to myself as an employee of Fox, I am not free to go out there and say things that would be contrary to Fox's best interest. You can ask me things, I can say things in my personal life, but guess what? I do work for Fox, and I'm a proud employee of this company. So I think she understood that she broke a rule, and I think I'm interested in knowing how other people, especially other black people at ESPN, react, because the first time when there was some question about what she had done and whether or not she should pull off the air, everybody said, no, we're not sitting in for Jamil. In this case, I think Jamil intentionally intentionally broke a rule and knows that she intentionally broke a rule.
You're a 49ers fan, right?
Right.
And you're a
Both of us.
49ers fan?
Yes.
Do you know that they're 2-19 since this whole thing began?
And it's
what?
This is a team. The thing that kills me, Jesse, and I know it kills Kimberly. This was an amazing team, one of the greatest teams
Football
ever in the
dynasty.
80s and the 90s, and it's like you can't even remember that. But drives me nuts about this whole thing is that if you endorse patriotic symbolism, the media will mock you. You're so old-fashioned and irrelevant. But if you resist patriotic symbolism, they elevate you because you're edgy and you're cool.
Right.
That's the bottom. I think that's the core bottom line issue here is that if you mock something that is considered traditionally American, it's great.
But they're hanging you out to dry because the majority of the country disagrees with that position.
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah,
gonna
but
get
I mean,
burned.
you know what? How about put a couple wins up on the board? They're like shaming the 49er dynasty that played so well for so many years back in the day. Remember, man, Ronnie Lott, number 42.
Joe Montana,
Hey,
right?
Jesse, this is your segment, but can I ask you a question real
Jerry
quick?
Rice.
Yes.
I don't understand. This
John
has
Taylor.
nothing to do with the flag or the anthem. Nobody's
Haley.
trying to say they don't like America. They're saying they have a grievance over police.
Kaepernick said it.
Yeah, no. He said the police issue with Black America is really what he was trying to raise awareness of.
Well, that
How
failed
did this-
because no one's talking about that.
Yeah, oh no, the right. I think people on the left are, but people on the right have
No,
made this into
people on
a
the left are
protest
talking
waving
about
issue.
Donald Trump.
Protest the police that are standing there if you had the guts. Stand in front of a cop and kneel.
That's
See
right.
where that gets you.
Charles
All right,
Haley.
nowhere. Directly
Roger
ahead.
Craig.
The story no one's talking about except Gutfeld. A major breakthrough in the fight against ISIS.
Yes.
Greg's monologue up next.
Me turn to stone, you shine me when I'm alone, and so I tell my
So remember ISIS? What happened to them? Well, in Sunday's New York Times, Rod Nordland writes about 1,000 ISIS dirtbags surrendering to Kurdish authorities.
Yes.
This is huge, Kimberly.
I love it.
Remember when martyrdom was their only option? Now these so-called warriors meekly give up. Why now? It's not hard to figure out. The only way to beat ISIS was to disprove the thesis that an Islamic State was inevitable. And to do that was through humiliating, crushing defeats. The only reason why ISIS was around so long was that we wouldn't do that. And their grisly propaganda proceeded unabated, persuading entire cities to flee instead of fight. The longer we waited, you saw it, the worse it got. But coming at them, bombing the crap out of them, killing everyone they know, it seems to work. Who would have thought? Oh yeah, President Trump. It's something for which he gets no credit. He's literally ending ISIS. It won't be the end of jihadism, but for now, the dreams of a state are over. Their terrain is shrinking. Sometimes a full frontal assault is the most strategic idea, and it beats Obama's dithering, all that ever got us was the paralysis of analysis. So laugh all you want about the tired phrase, there's a new sheriff in town. I think ISIS got that message, and while we have to be careful of the mission accomplished syndrome, what is undeniable is that ISIS is off the front pages and on their last legs. One hopes Kim Jong-un is watching. Yes, I wrapped it all up.
Indeed.
Take it away, everybody. Jesse, what do you think? Big news. No one's caring because everything else is covering it up.
I agree. I mean, ISIS, the strategy is taking hold. That Trump said in Saudi Arabia that he was going to have these Muslims drive them out, and they are. So it's the Kurdish military, the Arab militias, and the Iraqi forces. They've now toppled 3 strongholds, Mosul, Tel Afar, and Hawija. Raqqa is now the last stronghold. It's surrounded at this point.
Yep.
It could fall by the end of the year. We learned some valuable lessons here. 1, ISIS fighters, cowards. 2, loosening the rules of engagement, letting boots on the ground do their job, and then fighting them instead of containing them is actually an effective strategy. And the Iraqi military has come a long way since when Bush trained them. Remember those little videos where they were like hopping over things? That's gone. These guys are doing a great job. We also learned that everything President Obama said about ISIS was wrong. He said more boots on the ground was going to inflame the situation. He said more U.S. presence there was going to bog us down into a quagmire. And he also said there needed to be a political solution before there was a military solution. Turns out the military solution came first, and it's working. What I would like to see, though, is I would like to see more camera teams embedded in some of these battlefields, because then the American people can see the sacrifices that we're making.
Are you volunteering?
No, but here's the thing.
Yeah.
Here's my theory on why there are no cameras there, because we are killing everything, and they don't want to show it, and they're doing it in a way that might be experimental. They might be using stuff that, like drones and stuff, that we don't know about. So that's why I think we're not seeing a damn thing.
And by the way, I think you have no problem with that, because I think you want the end result and the outcome.
I'm pro-drone.
Yes, absolutely. You always are. And what I think is important, and Jesse, you touched on this, is the Kurdish Peshmerga. What an elite fighting force, and they have really done a tremendous job along with their allies. And like you said, it's pretty much only Raqqa, and they have them contained in little pockets in Raqqa. So I think they just need to wipe them out all the way, so they're not even JV team like Obama used to claim. But the interesting part is all of these members of ISIS, these fighters that are surrendering, okay, the ones that aren't, they're going into Afghanistan to try to fight the U.S. and Western forces there. So keep an eye on that. And that's hence the escalation and doing more, troops and stuff and forces in Afghanistan to help combat that. But where are all the ISIS guys that are surrendering going to go? Who is going to take care and control of them? And are they going to be released back out into Europe, where they can continue being radicalized or join with other other groups or have cells and pockets to, in fact, commit other acts of terror. So I think that's a really important piece.
Gitmo. Send him to Gitmo.
Well, put another floor on it or two.
That's right.
One, why hasn't President Trump been awarded the Nobel Prize for this? Because he clearly deserves this.
Oh, is that right?
Great point.
Yeah.
Took the words right out of one.
Yeah, really?
I mean, these are
was it words or was it
these are
throw-up?
modern day Nazis. These are modern day Nazis.
No, these are. Look, I can't tell you. I am all for the decimation of ISIS. Go for it. But remember, when you said, let's not say mission accomplished.
I agree.
Hey, I'm all for that because guess what? Everything, in fact, Kimberly was just pointing this out. What's going to happen inside of Syria? We don't know.
Yeah.
Nothing. Oh, Jesse says additional troops. No, really, we put a few more specific trainers and fighters on the ground to work with Iraqi forces and especially Kurdish forces. Guess what? The Turks don't want anything to do. And guess what? The Iraqis say the United States, by supporting the Kurdish forces, is dividing their country and contrary to their interests and interfering in their domestic affairs. I'm remembering.
Only Juan can turn a positive story about winning in Iraq into all these bad things.
Let me get Jillian.
There's a further point here. Okay, well, I don't want to just come in and be a downer. So the good news first is that Greg is right.
Yeah.
Major military victories on the ground in Iraq and Syria against ISIS, undeniably. And they cannot have a state, any legitimate claims to statehood without land. Okay, now are you ready for the bad news?
Okay.
You're going to get it anyway.
Okay.
The bad news is that the battlefield is no longer in Iraq and Syria. The battlefield has migrated into cyberspace. The battlefield today, 4 years into this battle, is now largely online. And while we are denying them safe havens, while we are killing their forces, they are attracting more and faster than ever before online. And that's where this part about combating the ideology comes in. And that's a point where President Obama was right, President Trump is right, everybody continues to point this out.
Part of the battle,
We're not very good at combating that. So we have major strides to go before we can declare mission accomplished. Unfortunately, I wish we could declare mission accomplished.
I just think killing them is a good thing.
It's
But
a
then you
great
gotta let-
thing.
you gotta
It's a
get
great thing.
Kurdish
That's why I
Peshmerga kill
started
them.
That's why I started with the good news.
Right? Otherwise,
Kurdish
it's on us
Peshmerga,
again.
say that 5 times.
Well, that's the problem. And by the way, majority of them that are captured, they're like, hey, yeah, my bad. I was just with ISIS for like a month. I'm actually a really good cook.
That's what they say.
I was a clerk, and I just want to go work and live in America at McDonald's.
Yeah, they should put him in front of a stove and be like, all right, whip something up. Let's see.
Offer a proof.
Isn't that funny? You are far more forgiving than I am. I would get out of
And
here.
then we shoot him in the head.
Yeah.
Okay. Coming up, President Trump unleashes fury on a GOP senator. That stands for Grand Old Party, Jillian. Details when we return.
Never stop.
Welcome back. It's a war of words between President Trump and Republican Senator Bob Corker, and it just keeps getting worse. Over the weekend, President Trump went after Corker for not being a strong senator, he said, and dropping out, he's not seeking re-election, because the president wouldn't endorse him. Trump tweeted this, among other things, quote, I would fully expect Corker to be a negative voice and stand in the way of our great agenda. Didn't have the guts to run. Senator Corker, well, he fired back, tweeting, quote, it's a shame the White House has become an adult daycare center. Someone obviously missed their shift this morning, end quote. Jillian, what do you make of this?
That's what we say about you all the time
I
around
see.
here.
I
Like,
see.
oh, someone missed their shift
This morning, yeah.
I don't think this is about who's right and who's wrong, because we'll never know, who really said what and who's done what. And it's also not about who wins, because I don't think anyone wins in this argument. I think everybody loses. But I do think that something important to consider is who has more on the line to lose here. And from that optic, the president definitely has more to lose, because Corker is now a lame duck. He has no one to care about except himself. He has no constituents to impress and retain. He's just a free agent. Whereas
So
the
you're saying
president,
he's
but
retiring.
in the next 2 years, the president actually needs Corker to get some important parts of his agenda through, like potentially tax reform, like potentially
Healthcare
rejiggering the Iran nuclear deal,
Yeah.
like
He blames
potentially
him for
some
that.
more nominees for the State Department if we ever get any. So I don't think that it was smart for the president to go down this road with him, not because he's wrong and Corker's right, but just because of the practical considerations here. I don't think it was a smart calculation.
So, Kimberly, in fact, over the weekend, the controversy about Tillerson supposedly calling Trump a moron, and then Corker gets involved and says, oh, I'm close to Tillerson, and in fact, Trump's tweets have undermined our diplomacy in the world.
All right, so somebody cue up like Bad Blood. You know what I mean? That's all I'm going to say. Obviously, they don't get along. They're not like simpatico. There's people who had thought at first maybe that Corker would primary President Trump, but his approval rating right now is like 34% in Tennessee. Marsha Blackburn is a strong candidate, more on the president's liking. So, I don't know where he's going with this, meaning Corker, but, it's not going over well in general. I mean, what's he going to do? He's going to hurt the party then next by not supporting tax reform or immigration or being on board for health care? I don't know.
All right, so
it's not
Jesse,
going well.
Today, Jerry Seib in the Wall Street Journal writes, the president has become a man without a party, that he's angry at Corker, he's angry at McConnell, he's angry at Lindsey Graham, John McCain, Jeff Flake, Susan Collins. What is going on?
Well, the president does well when he runs against even the Republican Party. He's an outsider that worked during the campaign, but I can't believe I'm saying this, but Corker started it. I can't believe that this is like what we've devolved into when we talk about Trump tweeting. He did. He said that Tillerson, Kelly, and Mattis are the only three people that are keeping the world from descending into chaos.
Right.
That's what triggered the Trump tweet and then triggered the retweet. The whole thing's nonsense. Everybody just needs to chill.
Well, whenever it comes to nonsense, the man who brings good sense to the table, Greg Gutfeld.
Yeah, everything about life you can learn from the movie Dirty Harry. Corker is a genius. He's playing the befuddled mayor in Dirty Harry. Remember, he was always screaming at Harry Callahan, Harry, you got to stop that. You're going to get somebody killed. But Harry always won. And so what he's doing, when Corker's saying, oh, God, Trump's going to start World War III, he's contributing to the fears of Iran and North Korea, that even the politicians on Trump's side are scared to death of him. Who knows what Trump will do? Well done, Corker. You're scaring the hell out of our adversaries, and I knew that's what you meant to do.
By the way, when I first met Bob Corker, he was mayor of Chattanooga, so maybe it could have been. I don't know. All right, coming up, calls for Christopher Columbus statues to be removed on a day when the man is honored with a public holiday. That story next.
Sounds like when the doves cry.
Columbus Day, that's today, and the Italian explorer who is honored today is under attack now. For months, Christopher Columbus statues have been vandalized across the country, and protests are now a common theme.
The truth needs to come out. By his own admission, Columbus had committed many, many atrocities and was really the author of the transatlantic slave trade. He led and participated in the annihilation of over 3 million indigenous people.
So 60-plus towns and cities across the United States are now rejiggering this holiday, and they're calling Columbus Day things like Indigenous Peoples Day. Greg, I know that as long as we get to keep the holiday, you don't really care what we call it, right?
You can come up with a better name, but it's got to be great to live in a country where this is your primary outrage. The greatest country the world has ever seen. You are out there arguing over the name of a holiday. That is the luxury of a leisure society. Let's talk about Leif Erikson. 500 years before Columbus, the guy discovered Newfoundland and I guess Canada. He was the first European expedition to North America. The most important thing, better than discovering America, Canada, wild grapes. Leif Erikson discovered wild grapes in, was it 1100 AD? I can't remember. Look it up at home. If it wasn't for Leif Erikson, I would not be drinking every night and keeping 3 bars in business. Thank you, Leif.
To Leif, everybody.
Way to stimulate the economy.
Leif Erikson Day.
Jesse, what do you,
Believe
can you get
Eric.
on board with Indigenous Peoples
One of those.
Day?
Yes, I think we should just keep Columbus Day and then add Indigenous Peoples Day, extra holiday. But here's the deal.
That's like Tuesday after.
Sure, yeah, it's like.
We'd still have to work, just so
Everybody
you know.
I know, we do, because we're here right now. Let's have some fun, though. I
we?
think Columbus is an illegal immigrant. He was the first illegal immigrant. Wasn't his country.
Oh, my
He
God.
landed there. He wanted to stay.
Oh, my God.
What's wrong? You guys love when that happens, Juan.
Wait,
Is
so
that right?
Yeah, you should love Columbus.
Now, America was the first sanctuary city.
That's right. He committed
That's
crimes. They didn't deport him. Come on.
so he was a dreamer put here by Spain and the kind of by
That's
no
right.
fault
No,
to
but,
his
you know, in
own.
all seriousness, no, it's a very important holiday, especially for Italian Americans. They celebrate his heritage on this day. And he was Italian. He sailed for the Spanish crown, but I think everybody needs to acknowledge that day is very important, and it needs to be remembered and respected.
I was just waiting for you to tell me why it was important.
For Italian Americans in
Well,
this
sure.
country,
Then why don't we have
Columbus
an Italian
is a hero.
American Day, a Heritage Day?
Well, that's
That's
kind of
and
what
then you don't
Columbus
have to
Day
like,
is.
you know, then you don't have to offend the people.
Well, that was a
who are
solution,
offended by-
Jesse. You came up with a solution.
I did. Wow, that's a first.
I know. You want
Way
to
to show
express
us your
outrage.
range, Jesse.
Exactly.
Really
Go, Jesse.
dug
Mark
deep.
this
Go.
date down.
He's like, here's an idea.
Kimberly, what do you think about this?
Look, I think you can't blame Christopher Columbus for atrocities that then happened later on. What was he supposed to do? Go back to Spain and be like, yeah, actually didn't discover a new continent. Delete. You know, right? So reported, did the job he was going to do, and then sure, I have no problem. You want to do Indigenous Peoples Day? I don't know. Pick some slot that's available on.
Day after the Super
So
Bowl.
just keep the holiday at another.
That's the
about that?
one. We
We
want
like
that.
that one.
Extend that
I
one.
must
Juan,
say,
you get the last word.
But
Do
I
you
was just
think we should
thinking,
just add one?
Indigenous Peoples Day, it invites mockery. What a
Why?
name. I mean, what a crazy name. I mean, if you want to say, let's do something for American Indians, Native American, okay, let's
Native
argue
American
about that.
Indian
They
Day.
always
But
say that they're
indigenous
indigenous
peoples-
to the region and came from it to begin with.
But
and that's where they
so this is
originated.
bigger than the USA, Kimberly? This is about, you mean the world?
I don't know when you made that phrase up. You guys,
I did.
Indigenous people.
I didn't make it up. I just said I
like,
thought
"Oh,
it was.
you
I
guys
thought
made
it
it
was.
up.
But it's never enough. We gave you another holiday.
Wait. Let's go to Louisiana.
Now
They
it
have the
doesn't-
most holidays.
Okay, but what would you? Okay, what would you like to call it?
Well, you said Italian Heritage Day. It was Jesse's solution, right?
No, a separate
Actually,
day.
that was
That was my idea.
Oh, that was your
I'll
idea.
take credit for it.
Let's call
Jesse
it
will
Greg
take
Day.
credit for it. You should all stick with us because the best part of the whole show is coming up next. It's One More Thing.
That's right.